Hello and welcome back to Today in the NBA, where today I'm going to be going over the Utah Jazz's last regular season, what they've done in the off-season and free agency, and looking at some possible season outcomes for them next season. To start off, the Utah Jazz finished as the 12th seed in the West last year with a record of 37-45. Now, to start off the season, they looked absolutely amazing. They genuinely looked like they were going to be a playoff team, which was incredibly surprising, especially considering since the Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert trades, no one thought that they would even be sniffing the play-in tournament. So it was a really nice shock to see them play so well to start off the year. But after the trade deadline, where they did make the trade to trade away Mike Conley, they sort of did lose that veteran presence on the team. This lead point guard, the lead player in the locker room, the culture setter for the Jazz was sort of gone, and the Jazz really struggled after that. They just weren't as good on offense and looked much more disorganized, especially with Colin Sexton running the show, who's not really someone that I think should be a point guard. He's more of a shooting guard. Now, looking at the Jazz's depth chart, starting, we have Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, Lauri Markkanen, John Collins, and Walker Kessler. And off the bench, we have Kris Dunn, Ochai Agbaji, Talen Horton-Tucker, Taylor Hendricks, and Kelly Olynyk. Now, the first thing that really pops off to me when looking at the Jazz's roster is that it has one major problem, but it's definitely not a bad problem to have. They've got too many guards. Colin Sexton, Jordan Clarkson, Kris Dunn, Ochai Agbaji, and Keyonte George. You could even consider Talen Horton-Tucker a guard. Now, that's a lot of players that you do have to fit into, 4 rotation spots, and it's going to be really tough for them. Colin Sexton, he's a great player. He was a top 7 draft pick, I think, going 7th overall back in 2019, 2018 maybe. He's a good player, he's a good scorer, he's just come back from injury, so it does remain to be seen how he plays. Kris Dunn, I didn't even know who he was, to be honest. I know I'm going to sound like a casual, but I just looked up his stats. Last season, in 22 games for the Jazz, he played 26 minutes a night, averaged 13 points, 5 boards, 6 assists, and a steal on 54, 47, 77% shooting splits. That is an absolutely amazing season. He is older at 28, but after coming off a season that good, there is no way that I don't see him averaging more than 20 minutes a night to start off the first maybe 20-25 games. Ochai Agbaji is a sophomore that the Minnesota Timberwolves drafted last year. I think he was a top 20 pick, and he was traded to the Jazz in the Rudy Gobert trade. He's a great player. He's got great 3-and-D potential, even a little bit of on-ball skill. We saw what he looked like in Summer League. He didn't look that great with the ball in his hands, but he was able to go off in a couple games, and I definitely think he's going to be another player that warrants 20 or so minutes a night. Keyonte George was the Jazz's rookie that they got. I think it was around the 20th overall pick. I think it was Minnesota's pick. Not 100% sure though. He looked absolutely amazing in Summer League. If you ask me, he was probably the 2nd or 3rd best player in Summer League, and probably the 2nd best rookie behind only Cam Whitmore, who won Summer League MVP. He's definitely shown that he deserves rotation minutes. He even did show some on-ball creation in the terms of playmaking, so who knows, maybe he could be running some backup shooting guard next year. It does remain to be seen. Now, to me, the one outlier in this group of guards is Jordan Clarkson. He's a great scorer, absolutely elite as a shot maker. He's someone that can go off for 40 points on any given night, but he's also someone that can shoot you out of games. If Lauri Markkanen wasn't on this team, I could definitely see Jordan Clarkson as being this team's leading scorer. However, if I were the Jazz, I would consider trading him. He is coming off the best season of his career, and I think he's just turned 30 years old, so he's probably not going to have a better season anytime soon. So if I were the Jazz, I would capitalize on his value while it's still at its highest, and this does free up more rotation minutes for Keyonte George, Ochai Agbaji, and Kris Dunn. I could maybe see Ochai Agbaji starting, and then Keyonte George coming off the bench as the 6th man. I don't know really what the package would be in return for Jordan Clarkson, but I could definitely see a first being in there, and maybe a 2nd round pick, or someone that has just been drafted, hasn't shown much potential, or maybe another team just takes him and the Jazz end up just taking on some salary, maybe getting 2 first round picks in return. Whatever way, I do think it's a necessary trade, because we definitely don't want to see something like what happened to Sacramento, where they had to trade away Tyrese Halliburton. I know it's looked like a win-win trade, but Tyrese is such a great player, and if the Jazz could avoid trading away someone that could potentially be an all-star in the future by trading away Jordan Clarkson, I definitely think that it's worth it. Now, the other interesting thing to look at when looking at the Jazz's depth chart is John Collins starting over Taylor Hendricks. I know that John Collins, he was a really good player. I think he was averaging 20 and 10 on a team that made the conference finals, but he's not that same player anymore, and I really do want to see Taylor Hendricks get those starting minutes over John Collins. Taylor Hendricks was, I believe, the 7th, 8th or 9th overall pick, not 100% sure on his placing, but he was definitely a top 10 pick. He's shown some great potential as someone who could be a 3 and D plus forward, which is great, especially in today's NBA, where versatile switchable bigs that can defend on the perimeter and block shots inside are going to be key to a team's future moving forward. He's not as good as John Collins is now, and he might not be for maybe another couple years, but I definitely think that it is worth starting him just to get that development. I don't think that the Jazz are going to be much better than they were this season, if better at all, so it will definitely be worth starting Taylor Hendricks if you ask me, and I think that maybe 30 games into the season, we won't see John Collins starting anymore. He'll be replaced by Taylor Hendricks. Now for the Utah Jazz's off-season, I have no choice other than to grade them an A+. I know that this is a little bit of a hot take, and I am quite high on this team, even though I don't think that they'll be finishing too high in the standings next year. I still think that they're going to be a great team. I loved the Jordan Clarkson re-signing. I don't think many people thought that he was going to be back with the Utah Jazz. I don't think it was a re-signing actually. I think it was a contract extension made at the contract extension deadline, even though I'm still going to include it in the off-season. I loved their draft, picking up Keyonte George, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Taylor Hendricks, all absolutely great picks. I think they're all going to be great rotational players for the Utah Jazz further down the line for them. And the final move that the Utah Jazz made this offseason was trading for John Collins. This was an amazing trade for the Jazz. They did have to take on John Collins' salary, which I think does go for another 2 or 3 years after this season, but all they had to give up was Rudy Gay and a second or two. I think that this is pretty good value for someone in John Collins, who, as mentioned before, did average 20 and 10 on a team that went all the way to the conference finals. Hopefully he does help the Jazz out by bringing in some playoff experience, and maybe he can get back to his former ways, who knows. And now for the final segment of this video, we have my player predictions for next season. I think Lauri Markkanen is going to be an all-star again. I don't think that he's going to be a starter, but I definitely see him being a reserve this year, not an injury replacement or anything. I can see Taylor Hendricks and Keyonte George both making all-rookie teams. I'm going to say all-rookie second team though, but that could change depending on how many minutes and how much of an opportunity they get. And finally, I can see Walker Kessler making the all-defensive second team. I know that's a really big thing, especially considering he's a big, and there are already a lot of great defensive bigs in the league, but I really do think Walker Kessler has the ability to make such a good defensive impact that he could definitely make an all-defensive team. If not this year, he's 100% going to make one further on in his career. Anyway, that does it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please don't forget to leave it a like. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What do you think is going to happen to Jordan Clarkson? Do you reckon he's on the team at the end of the year? Do you reckon he leaves? What do you think happens to Keyonte George if he continues what he was doing in Summer League, or if he somehow regresses? If you really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I do post daily NBA content, so it is worth keeping up to date on. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.